What's up, Internet? This is Rambling Josh, and today I'm going to be announcing my next LP project. As you can clearly tell by the title above this video, the next game I'm going to be playing is Pokemon Red. That may seem like a little bit of an odd choice, because it deviates a fair amount from the type of game that I normally play on this channel. So, typically, the games that I tend to play on this channel they're usually older games that are they're the classics that I enjoyed in my youth, or maybe not necessarily in my youth, but maybe that I found later, or whatever. Usually they're what I would consider classic games, and oftentimes I like to try and play games that are sort of underappreciated, that they're not as well known, or they don't get as much credit as they deserve, or so on and so forth. I say that at the start of pretty much every LP I've ever done. Well, not everyone, but a lot of them, that, oh, this game doesn't get as much credit as it deserves, or whatever. So, Pokemon obviously does not fall into that category, because I mean, the Pokemon franchise is easily one of the most successful franchises there is. It may even be the most successful video game franchise ever. I'm not honestly sure. I should look that up. Oh, whatever. So, my reasoning behind doing Pokemon is a little bit different. Basically, I grew up in sort of the Pokemon era, if you will. I remember Pokemon just exploding out of nowhere around the time I was in grade 5? Something like that. Well, I know I was into Pokemon in grade 5. And it didn't really go away. It kind of slowly faded out over several years. But anyways, so I was kind of right in the thick of it, and after that point where Pokemon kind of faded out, I feel like a lot of people just started writing Pokemon off just kind of out of hand. Like, they just assume, oh, that's kiddie stuff, or whatever, and they don't want to play that kind of stuff. And for a while I was like that too. I was like, okay, well, I'm done with my Pokemon phase. I don't want to go back to that. And a few years ago I kind of got back into it a little bit. I still haven't played a lot of the games, but I guess my perspective has changed, and I'm kind of midway between the two camps now, I guess you could say. That's not where I was planning on going with that at all, but whatever. The point that I'm trying to make here is that Pokemon games are often just written off out of hand, and they really shouldn't be, because even if the subject matter is a little kiddie and people are like, I don't want to take care of them Pokemons and whatever, at the base of it, Pokemon games are very solid RPGs, and that is totally my thing. Like, I don't want to say that there aren't any, like, traditional style RPGs anymore, because on, like, handheld platforms there's still a fair number of them, but in a way, in a weird way, Pokemon is kind of like the last standing, like, I guess, JRPG game that is still successful. I mean, there are others, obviously, but man. So I was trying to sum up my point there, and I ended up just rambling again. The point of doing Pokemon Red is that Pokemon games don't get the credit that they deserve, not for being good, but for being a solid RPG that is not just for kids. So that's kind of what my reasoning was. Now, as for why I chose Pokemon Red, there's a few reasons. The first is that Generation 1 Pokemon games are the only generation that I'm very familiar with. I have played through Generation 2 a few times, and I've played through Generation 3 once. Those are the only like core series Pokemon games that I've personally played. But Generation 1, like when I was a kid, I would play through that game like literally every week. I would literally sit down and play the game till I got to the end. Then I would like transfer all my Pokemon over to Pokemon Coliseum and start over again. I was practically like a Pokemon farmer, or whatever you want. It was kind of ridiculous. So it was kind of a no-brainer to go for Pokemon first generation at least. So out of the first generation, there's of course Red, Blue, and Yellow. I considered doing Yellow because Yellow is kind of like the director's cut version of Generation 1, or whatever you want to call it. But I kind of take a little bit, like, if I'm just playing for myself, I like to play through Pokemon Yellow instead of the other ones, but overall I feel like it's not as good of a game, because in Pokemon Yellow they just kind of say, here's a Charmander, here's a Squirtle, here's a Bulbasaur, and it just makes sense to use at least, I would say, 2 of those 3 Pokemon. And the whole fun of the Pokemon games is picking what Pokemon to choose and building your team. And if you have these, like, awesome Pokemon just thrown at you, then it takes away that element of the game. So it's a matter of either choosing not to use those Pokemon, or removing half of the customization of your party. And neither of those are particularly interesting to me. So I decided to go with either Red or Blue. And when it comes to that, it's a little bit more of a not as well defined a decision, I guess I would say. My reasoning isn't founded in quite as sound a logic. So there are 2 reasons to choose Red over Blue, in my mind. The first for me is that when I was a kid, everyone was getting Pokemon, and basically everyone I knew got Pokemon Blue. Everyone was convinced that it was the better version, which is kind of silly to claim, but when you're talking about, what, like 10-year-olds, then it's honestly not that surprising. But anyway, so everyone got Pokemon Blue, and I got Pokemon Red. I never felt that, like, oh, poor me, I'm stuck with Pokemon Red, or anything like that. It was just whatever. I would like to say that I was like the one guy with Pokemon Red that everyone wanted to trade with, because everyone else had Pokemon Blue, but the truth of the matter is that none of us had link cables, so there wasn't any trading going on. But anyways, I had Pokemon Red. That's the game that I had. So that's the game that I played. And so going with Pokemon Red is sort of a little bit nostalgic, of a nostalgia thing for me. The other reason, which actually does have some like legitimate meat behind it, is the fact that, okay, I don't claim to be any sort of like Pokemon expert by any stretch, but I'm pretty sure that in the canon of the game, like the official storyline, if you will, the name of the champion from the first Pokemon game, the Kanto Pokemon champion, or Pokemon Master, whatever they're called, is always referred to as Red. And as you may know, when you name your character at the start of the first generation games, I'm pretty sure it's the first default name on the list is Red and Blue and their respective games. So it makes sense to me that the hero from Pokemon Red is the official hero. He's like the canonical hero of the first generation games. I could be wrong. It could be just completely random, but it makes sense to me, and that's something. And there's one other reason to go for Red, aside from those, but I am not going to bother with that in this video. I'll talk. It's a kind of dumb reason. I'll just go over it. I'll mention it when I start up the first episode. But anyways, so yeah, Pokemon Red. I'm gonna be playing. I should mention that the way that I'm going to be playing Pokemon Red is probably different from how a lot of people play it, but that's not really here or there. The whole point of this channel is I play games and I share it with you guys just to kind of share on the experience. I don't claim to be doing super awesome best walkthrough ever, anything like that. It's just fun to play games. So, I'm going to be playing Pokemon Red my way, so that's just something to keep in mind. But, yeah. That's about all there is to say about that.